Hey guys, in this time I'm gonna explain you a little bit about Kali. It's nothing fancy, nothing new. It's just our effort so that you guys know, in case that you never know before, this specific Linux distribution, since we're gonna be using it heavily during our labs. So first of all, what is Kali Linux? Well, it is a penetration testing Linux distribution. It is created by offensive security team. It is a really awesome distribution. Mainly, it has a repository of multiple tools so that security-related engineers can use them in their engagements. You can find tools for hacking web wireless, hacking web applications, for reverse engineers, for database hackers, for security auditors, for forensic guys, for password crackers. I mean, it is an arsenal of tools that we will take a look later. But it is pretty cool. It is very recommended because that way you can find tools that you probably didn't know before, or tools that sometimes are hard to configure. Let's talk about, let's say, a wireless specific driver from a specific network card that it is difficult to install. Well, those guys have put a lot of effort in order to configure those drivers in order for you to have ready that specific testing. And that's just one example. That's the effort behind offensive security. They put a lot of effort configuring this specific Linux distribution so that everyone who is able to use it, they can get those benefits. They don't need to take too much time trying to install other stuff. You can go to Kali Linux downloads from offensive security. You can see that they provide already virtual machine options in 32 bits and 64 bits. So you can just download it. It is really big, so I'm not gonna do that right now. But also it's pretty cool because they also have images for other architecture. In this case, ARM images, which is kind of smaller architectures for phones, like Android phones. So you can see here that they have Raspberry and many other architectures related to ARM, Samsung Chromebook, and all of those. So once you download it, you just place it into your local directory, and you will need either virtual VMware licensed to run it, or VMware Player, which is free. So you can just easily go to VMware. You just search for VMware Player download, and then you can just pick the first one. And basically, I mean, this is something that you guys already know, but you just click on VMware Player, and eventually you will have those links. You just need to download VMware Player and be ready to start using this specific image. Once you have it, the next thing you need to do is you need to run VMware. In my case, I have VMware, so I'm going to explain you that process. You just go to File, Open, and then you search for your specific Kali version. I have it here already. You go to your folder where you download the image. By the way, the image comes with 7-zip. 7-zip is like a zip compressor. You just need to download a software which is able to open 7-zip, like WinRAR. I think that's able to handle it. And you just decompress it into your folder, in my case right here, and when you open it with VMware, it will be able to recognize your VMware virtual machine configuration file, which is this in blue. You just double click on it, and finally here you have all the configuration already set up by this specific image. You can see that it has a certain memory amount, processor, hard disk, and network adapter, all those things. And at the bottom you can see it says Kali Linux 1, login as root, and password Tor. By the way, this Kali Linux change. Usually these guys are updating the images and changing the version, adding more drivers, adding more tools. I want to just quickly talk about the network adapter. This is very important for you as a penetration tester or security reviewer. Here you have mainly three options. Host only, that means that your network is going to be just local. You can talk between VMs and even with the host. And I'm going to do a stop here. We have in these virtual environment scenarios, we have a host and a guest. When we talk about the host, that's the operating system running the machine, the hardware behind. And when we talk about the guest, that's the operating system running on top of the host machine. In our case, Kali, since it is running inside the virtual machine, that's our guest OS. And our host OS is my Windows system. So here in the host only, that means that Kali, the guest image, can communicate with other virtual machines and also with the host operating system, in this case Windows, but cannot be reached by the network or internet. NAT is a network address translation protocol. So this basically is putting your box behind a gateway, so that basically it can reach internet but cannot be reached directly. And so basically in this case, it is going to be connecting through the host network. In this case, through our Windows operating system. It's going to be using our Windows host as the gateway to reach internet. And finally, the bridged. Bridged is like you have your virtual machine in the same network. It's like if someone is in the same network and try to connect to your machine, they will be able to reach it. And they don't even notice it is a virtual machine behind. So this is pretty cool when dealing with penetration testing efforts where you need the victims or the machines being tested to connect back to you. That's the way you need to go. Bridge can help you to, for example, something called reverse shells, that they need a real IP to connect back and give access to the penetration tester to the machine being tested. Bridge is gonna be the way to go, because for example, if you use NAT, when the victim machine is trying to connect back to you, they won't be able to reach you because you are behind a gateway. Keep in mind that. So you will need kind of other setup of configuration, which is difficult. So just keep in mind, bridge is like if you are in the network with your own IP. NAT is you are behind a gateway, and host you have node connection to others computers in the network. With that being said, I mean, we have many other options, but that's the most important one. We're going to be using here NAT, and I would recommend host only if you are doing malware analysis, any malicious sample. That way you don't affect other networks. But let's start using NAT so that we can have internet access and not exposed and not be reached directly by other hosts. We'll click here in power on this virtual machine. As usual, you will get VMware running, and it's a little bit slow. But basically here you will have two options. Recovery mode is basically when something is going wrong, the hard disk was damaged and you need to fix it. You will go here, you will enter your root password, and you know, this is more like for Linux system administrators. If you know how to play with hard disk, how to fix issues in your OS, you need to get there if there is any problem. And this is the default one, so we'll just wanna enter right there. Once you enter, the Kali is going to start booting. By the way, Kali is based on Debian or Debian. I don't know how to pronounce it. What that means is that the way that you install software in Debian, the way you configure Debian to access internet, to the way you configure Debian to manage the different services, is going to be the same way you're going to be doing it here in Kali. And I'm going to show you all those different options in a different lab. So this is the way it is booting, and we are going to get our prompt in a second. And once we get the prompt, we will need to enter our username. I created a couple of usernames already, but let's enter with root, so that that's the one that you guys are gonna get at the beginning. So I enter, you get access. You have the prompt of the logo, really cool logo of Kali Linux. When you wanna switch between VMware and the host, if you click right here in the screen, you will have access, you see, to the host. And if you want to release the mouse in order to get access to your host operating system, you just click Ctrl Alt and you get out of this host, so you can reach other menus outside, as you can see. Again, if you want to get back, you just click right into the screen and you are inside again. And here you can click Ctrl Alt Enter to get full screen. If you don't get the full screen, you need to install VMware Tools, which is another option in the menu. It is called right here. You make it install VMware Tools. In your case, it's going to say install VMware Tools. That's basically helping you to be able to get full screen, also be able to transfer files to your virtual machine, or to do copy-paste text into the clipboard easily. So that's pretty useful. Because let's say that you have here, by the way, I just entered the terminal. Let's say that you are here, and let's get out of this. I'm just gonna open Notepad quickly, and let's say that you need to paste a really big chunk of code, whatever it is, right? And you wanna copy any specific text outside your virtual machine. You just right click, copy. And when you get into your machine and you just right click and paste, you can see that you can get that. That's pretty useful, because sometimes you need to share information with other friends in that they don't have access to the virtual machine. Sometimes you find something in the host in a specific page that you want to share inside. So sometimes if you don't have VMware Tools enabled, that's gonna be a problem. And as you can see, this is pretty helpful. And here I just opened the terminal. As you can see, you can find it right at the top. Also, you can find here in the applications all the access to the different options. Here in Kali Linux, you have all the arsenal of tools, as you can see right there. We're going to talk about that in a second. And the first thing you need to do when you get access to the Kali is you need to change the password. As you remember, the password is store, so you don't want anyone to reach your Kali Linux system and get access to your host. So you just do passwd, enter, and then you will just enter your new password, anything that you want to put there. Obviously it's recommended strong password, which can be like 16 characters long and alphanumeric with special chars, and it's going to say password updated successful. And that's very important because it's your root password, right? And finally, as you notice, I changed well, I'm going to talk about it in the next lab. So you are inside, this is your Kali, and you're ready to go. So we are here in the second part of this Kali labs. As I said, it's just basic stuff to get you guys ready to use it. Right now I'm going to explain you just the next steps right after you start running Kali. So the first thing that you might want to do is configure your system. In my case, I just changed the desktop background. You just right click here. This kind of things is not related to Kali, but still I'm going to just mention it quickly. You click here in the plus sign. Here you can go to your file system and find any picture you want, select it, and then you will get the background changed. Also, you can see that I have here the terminal right here. You can access it. In the terminal, as you notice, I changed the host. You see, it's the CSTT. You can also print the host name like this, and you want to change it. You just go to etc host name, and you just put the name right there. Reboot the machine, and you will get it. Connectivity is very important the first thing you need to know is you have access to internet, so you need to do ifconfig. That's going to print out the content of your configuration. And normally here Kali is very good recognizing multiple drivers, so usually you won't have any problems unless you have a weird configuration with weird grade cards. Probably Kali is not going to be able to identify it. But here, so far, we can see the IP address that got assigned to us. That IP address is very important to notice that it's coming from a DHCP server. If you are working from home and you have your Wi-Fi provider, it already have DHCP enabled, so you just need to request IP and you will get. How do you request IP? So let's say that I'm gonna take down that specific interface, so we don't have anything right now. So I'm just gonna use the DH client, which is the DHCP. You can see in the right side we got disconnected, so we just do DH client, the interface, and if we do ifconfig, you can see that we got the IP. Okay, so that's very important. By doing this, you don't need to configure anything else. The next step that you need to do is just you need to ping something outside to see if you're getting connection. You can see that you're getting 65 bytes response, so we are fine. Another important point here is that sometimes I highly recommend you to also ping IPs, because sometimes you will have internet access but not DNS resolution. So if you, for example, do a ping with an IP address, you can see that you get a response. But let's say that I'm going to access the DNS configuration, which is right here, and I'm just going to comment out the name server like this. If I ping Yahoo, you can see it says unknown host. But if I ping the IP, you can see that I'm still getting response. That's a pretty common mistake, that when we are trying to ping domain names and we see that we don't have response, we think that we don't have connection, we don't have any internet access, and that's not true. As you can see, we have communication, but we don't have DNS resolution. So as you saw, I just need to go to resolve, and in this case I enable the default one, which actually was added by the DHCP server when I executed the DH client. But a quick trick also here is that sometimes our name service doesn't work, so you can use Google ones if you don't mind going through Google traffic. It's up to you, which is 8888. You just save it, and you can see that if we do a ping, we get again access. Okay, just gonna revert it back to the one that I had, and that's it. So we have configuration. If for some reason when you do ifconfig you don't get any interface, that's a troubleshooting, is out of scope, but I recommend you to go to Kali forums. They have multiple support there. It's not out of scope to fix those issues. We are assuming everything's up and running. What is next? The next thing is that you need to know what is running in your Kali Linux. Some of the time there are multiple services running. If you do lsoft-e TCP, you can see what it is running right now. We can see that we have Apache and MySQL. Okay, MySQL is the database, Apache is the web server. And this is very important, because probably you're running services that you don't know, and probably you don't need them to be running, like Apache. If you don't have a web server in Kali, you don't need to run it. The way you manage those services is by using the service command, which I'm going to show you in a second. The second option is you can go to Kali Linux System Services, and here you have the services that are running or can be run, and you just click on them to restart, start, stop. The same for all of them. HTTP for the web server, Metasploit for the framework, exploitation framework, MySQL for the database, OpenBus, SSH, remote access. But sometimes it's boring for us to go to the menu all the time, so you can just quickly here say service, and then in this case Apache. If you, by the way, if you click Apache and then you click the tab, it's gonna complete the command, which is pretty useful because it's gonna identify the service you are referring to if you don't remember the name. That's pretty cool. And then you say stop in this case. And then if we run our lsoft command again, trying to see which services are running in this specifically, we can see that we don't have Apache anymore. Okay, the same we can do with MySQL, and we can also obviously start Apache again. So that way you can use service in the command prompt to start stop services, and you don't need to do it through the since we're talking about Apache, let's talk about the configuration quickly of this guy. Again, we are not system administrators. We are not here to teach you how to configure Apache, MySQL. Those are out of scope of our academy. But definitely we just want you to know where you can find those configuration files within Kali. Apache is found here in Apache 2, and here is the whole configuration as usual. Apache.conf, Apache2.conf has all the configuration from Apache. You know, if you have multiple servers, the log file, timeouts, I mean, all the configuration from Apache, HT access, anything. And also here in sites enable is what you want to look at. That's pretty useful because here is where you will have all the exercises. You can have here your own exercises loaded in your web server. So if you open enable 000 default, you can see that the document root is in bar www. But if this is changed, you will always find here what is the root folder of your web server. In this case is bar www. So let's go there. Here you can see that we have already our CSTT folder. So we'll go there. You can put here any directories and files, and those are going to be reflected in your web server. So I just created here the Hola HTML, which is just hey there. So if we open our browser, in Kali they use this specific browser, which is called IceWhistle, which is basically a Firefox version. And here, if we paste our IP address, this is not our IP address, let's grab it. So we have here our IP address and slash hola.html. Oh, it's not this. Hola.html. Oh, sorry, we missed our folder CSTT. So you can see that we have access of our information. That's pretty useful because you can see that we can always load our exploits or anything that you are testing our application. That's the way to go. Okay, so that's Apache. Let's talk about H. Everything is under SSH. Here you have everything. SSHD is to get access. SSHD, sorry. SSHD is to get access to your own SSHD configuration, and SSH without D has access to SSH client. So here you can configure whatever you have in your SSHD server. That's pretty much it. The way you test it is just obviously to do SSH localhost, and it says refused because if you remember, we don't have SSHD running. So we do again a service SSH start. Now we can do we can see it is running now, SSD, and finally we do SSH to localhost, and we should receive this kind of response like, hey, this is a new host, do you want to add it? You say yes, and you get a prompt. If you don't get this, there is a problem and you might need to reconfigure the server, but hopefully it's not. Finally, MySQL, the way you access it is with MySQL-h localhost. By the way, let me tell you something quickly. In Kali, you already have MySQL. You can see here is listening in localhost, which is totally recommended. You don't want your database to be using the IP address and therefore can be reached outside Kali. We are just using it locally. So here is listening locally, which is as expected. So you just need to do MySQL-h localhost and you should be fine. You get access. You can do something like use MySQL. This is out of scope, but they're gonna show you show tables. You will have the default tables configured in MySQL. Description of user, everything related to sysadmin. So again, if this is pretty useful because sometimes you need to access MySQL because you want to add a new server or you need to add a new application that requires a specific database. So that's the way to go. With MySQL, usually the password is TOR, T-O-O-R, and here you can use -p in case you have another password, and it's gonna prompt you for the password in case you change the password for root or if it is store, so you can enter it. Or you can also, if you added another user, like in my case I added another user, you can say -u the user and -p to prompt for the password, and then you enter the password for that user and you get access with that user. That's just another way to go. So I think that's all. Again, if you want to change the password for root or any other user, usually passwd, you will need to enter a new password. I am using root right now because all those options that I'm showing you, all those options are only executed by root, but it is highly recommended to use a user, a default user for you. So you just do add user test, and it will ask you for a password. Anything that you want to write here, you say yes, and it is added. So the way you know it is added, you can just cut etc passwd and grab this test. You can see that it is already added there, and so if you want to remove it, you just do tell user test and it is removed. So we do cut again, we don't find it, and when you remove a user, you need to also remove manually the home folder, and that's it. Finally, in etc passwd, you might want to go and do a search for bash. Bash means that those specific users have access. You can see here we have Defender and Linux, they have bash, but sometimes, and especially Kali, I saw that it has many other users with bash. I don't recall, but I remember that probably, let's say that MySQL user right here, if he has this bash, that means MySQL can get access to your box with a shell. That's not recommended. So make sure to have all of them false, just root and your users with a bin bash. Everyone else bin false. That's pretty much it in terms of quick configuration, guys. Vulnerability analysis is more scanning, like Cisco. If you have any Cisco routers, you can use these tools to scan those routers. Database related scanners for SQL Server, for MySQL. We have really cool tools like SQL Map, SQL Ninja. Those ones, once you found a vulnerability in a web server that is related to SQL injection, you can just automate the process to get access to the server or to dump the database. So those are pretty cool tools. We're going to be using them. Fuzzing tools, fuzzers that you can use to find vulnerabilities, can be Spike. It's pretty cool, Spike. It is more related to find vulnerabilities in applications. It supports plain text and binary protocols. It's pretty powerful. We have MIS scanners. Again, as you see here, is Nmap again. It's repeated. Nictays for web servers. I mean, this is kind of, multiple sections, and they repeat some of the tools. Open source assessments. Maltego is pretty cool. This is an application. I'm just gonna click on it. Maltego is pretty cool for threat intelligence. So basically, and actually it's a license. You need a license to use it, but they provide limited license for us that you just need to register, and I think they give you 30 days and you can use it. But basically what it does is, if you are trying to find, let's say in the IPT, Advanced Persistent Threat kind of research, that we have a certification about that, by the way. If you want to know who are the threat actors behind, probably you find a username or you find an email password. Maltego, if you provide that information, he's going to try to find all the IPs related to that username and all the hosts that were registered by that name or related name. It's going to give you all the IPs, and then basically he's going to provide a map of all information related to that user. If you provide an IP, it's the same. It's going to say, okay, this IP was open, but it's also related to these other IPs, and eventually to this specific host and to this specific user. So it's pretty cool to find the whole picture about a specific person or a specific asset in the network. As I said, you need to register, and eventually you will get access to this tool, but I'm not gonna do anything here. Investigate, when you start trying to add information. You can see here, you can add parents, you can add children. That's all related to the nodes where you are dealing with a research, when you're trying to find specific persons, IPs, hosts, servers. And again, coming back to our set of tools,